What's going on, y'all? Today we are going to be comparing two very popular daily trainers in the running shoe market, and those are the New Balance Rebel V5, which actually released more recently, versus the ASICS Novablast 5, which is a kind of tried and true running daily trainer favorite among the masses, or at least amongst shoe tubers like myself. So let's see which daily trainer you should buy or which daily trainer is better for your needs. So as always, we are going to talk about the outsoles and the traction patterns of both of these shoes. As you can see with the New Balance Rebel V5's traction pattern, it kind of looks like a basketball shoe's outsole, which in my opinion is a great thing for traction. I do want to disclose that I did run in mostly dry weather conditions on the road in both of these shoes, with the exception that in the Novablast 5, since I've had this shoe for a lot longer, I have ran in the rain. So just to get that disclaimer out the way. So the traction on the New Balance Rebel V5 performed phenomenally. I think that this is one of the better traction patterns or better traction performances you can get out of a daily trainer. Not to say it's on the Puma Grip or Adidas Continental Rubber outsole level, but it is getting close to there, and I think it's attributed to that pattern as well as the rubber used on the outsole. So traction on the Rebel V5 is phenomenal. Now, moving on to the outsole and the traction performance on the ASICS Novablast 5, we have an outsole that kind of looks like the ASICS Superblast line. I don't really have much to say about this outsole pattern other than I don't think that the traction is the best, and it's also not the worst. I would say that the traction performance on the Novablast 5 is around average when it comes to sticking to the ground. Like I did say, I ran in the rain a little bit in this shoe in wet conditions as well as dry conditions. In dry conditions, you're going to be good to go. I would hope so in dry weather conditions on the road. But when you are running in the rain, I was a little bit more careful in this shoe. It does get a little bit slick on the bottom. So if you do run in a lot of rain, I would say just be careful in the Novablast 5. So if we're strictly just talking about traction performance in both of these shoes, I would have to give the edge or the clear win, honestly, to the New Balance Rebel V5. I just think that the outsole rubber that they used, as well as the pattern, just works so much better in the conditions that I ran in, which is mostly dry weather conditions on the road. It really felt like I was sticking to the ground a lot better than the Novablast 5. So keep in mind, I did run a little bit in wet conditions in the Novablast 5, and I haven't yet in the New Balance Rebel V5. So this is kind of also just me hypothesizing too. But in my experience, I just really like the traction of the New Balance Rebel V5 a lot more. Now, moving on to durability of both of these outsoles, it is a little bit tricky to compare because I only have around 40 to 45 miles in the Rebel V5 and I have over 100 miles in the ASICS Novablast 5. But I will say that the Novablast 5's outsole is definitely wearing out faster than a lot of my other daily trainers or a lot of my other running shoes in general. So for durability of the outsole, I'm going to have to give the ASICS Novablast 5 definitely a little bit below average. It is a fantastic shoe, but I think that the durability of the outsole is something that's holding it back from being one of my top daily trainers, or I mean, it's still in the top three, but from being maybe my favorite daily trainer, I think that the outsole durability is something, especially for bigger runners like myself, that is definitely a concern. Whereas the New Balance Rebel V5, I only have, 40 to 45 miles on this shoe, but honestly, this outsole, if I cleaned it up a little bit and cleaned the white midsole part of this outsole, I think it would look brand new. It's holding up really well, and honestly, I have seen more wear in 40 to 45 miles on a lot of other shoes, and in this shoe I feel like it's going to last a long time when it comes to the outsole. So for outsole as well as traction, I'm going to give the win to the New Balance V5, New Balance Rebel V5, and it's by quite a wide margin. Now, let's move on to the cushioning setup of both of these shoes. So on the New Balance Rebel V5, we have a full-length fuel cell midsole. Again, New Balance likes to throw around fuel cell a lot, so we don't exactly know how much PBA there is in this foam, as well as what percentage, I guess, is EVA, what percentage is PBA. I'm just going to tell you guys not really more about the specs because you can really search those online, but just how they felt on foot. So you do get a 6mm heel to toe drop. I did see online that it says 35 in the heel, dropping to 29 in the forefoot. I think in my full review as well as my first run review, when I Googled the stack height, it was a little bit higher. So I'm not sure if that's been updated or not. But overall, I feel like this cushion setup was very lightweight, as well as it did feel kind of like higher stack and had really good compression. I would say that it feels very airy and light, and it compresses quite a bit, especially at those slower paces. And then when you are picking up the pace or you are going on long runs, you do feel like the foam compresses quite a bit, especially in the forefoot, which honestly I kind of prefer, just to make sure that you're not sinking into the shoe, especially if you're running a little bit faster, or when you're on your long runs, you don't lose that stability aspect. So overall, I honestly really enjoyed the cushion setup of the Rebel V5. I will say that when I did take the shoe on longer runs than maybe 10 to 12 miles, I did feel it in my body the next day. So when it comes to impact protection on longer runs, especially for a bigger runner like myself at 200 pounds, I would say that be wary of this cushion setup, especially if you're planning to do a lot of long runs in them, because I don't think that the impact absorption is as good as maybe other foams and other daily trainers. But overall, it's a very, very comfortable shoe if you're planning to run less than maybe 10 miles in the shoe, as well as, you're taking it easy, you're doing majority of your runs at slower paces, but you do have that option to pick up the pace in the shoe without feeling like you're sinking into the shoe. Overall, the setup is definitely more soft than firm. Like I said, only when you run faster or you run longer, the cushion setup tends to firm up. And I would also say that this is not the most responsive or bouncy setup. It's more definitely on the softer side. Now, moving on to the cushion setup of the ASICS Novablast 5, I would say that it's a touch firmer than the Rebels setup. And you do get technically on paper a little bit more stack height in the shoe, but honestly, I felt like when I was wearing both of these shoes, they felt very comparable when it came to the amount of cushion, as well as maybe the amount of impact protection that you get in this shoe. So the ASICS Novablast 5 uses an FF Blast Max cushion setup, full length. I believe it's completely EVA. They don't even say that there's any PBA in this shoe, and I would say that that's pretty accurate. When I first got the Novablast 5s, I feel like I was sinking a touch into the shoe, but that broke in really quickly after 20 to 25 miles. I started to feel like the foam firmed up, and it just honestly feels like a pretty comfortable EVA. It's not the most responsive, and it's definitely not as soft as the Rebel V5, but it definitely gets the job done. Impact protection wise, I would say that the Novablast 5 has an edge definitely over the Rebel V5. I was able to run a lot of longer runs in the shoe, so anywhere from 16 to 17 to even 18 miles in the Novablast 5. And towards the longer end of that range, I did feel like my knees were starting to hurt a little bit in the shoe. So I wouldn't compare this setup to maybe the Super Blast setup or some of the other super trainers that have kind of super foams in the shoe, but it does have a decent amount of impact protection and definitely more than the Rebel V5, while still maintaining a good level of stability, as well as, not too soft and not too firm. So it is a very comfortable setup. I would just say when it comes to durability on both of these setups, I don't think that the foams are going to last a super long time, especially if you're a heavier runner like myself. I just feel like when I put these shoes on feet, it feels like the foams are a little bit more on the fragile side or the softer side, especially with both of them being probably a higher percentage of EVA. And I think the Novablast 5 is like completely EVA. I do have a lot of experience with compressing foams pretty quickly. The Novablast 5 itself has already pretty much compressed at 100 to 110 miles. But with that being said, with that larger stack height, it still has a good amount of impact absorption. It just doesn't feel like it did fresh out of the box. So if I were to compare these two cushion setups and I had to choose a winner, I would say that I'm going to give you guys a cop-out answer. For shorter runs and runs under 10 miles, I would really prefer the Rebel V5. I just feel like it feels lightweight, it feels versatile, it feels really lightweight. I want to emphasize that this shoe overall, it just feels really light. And not to say the Novablast 5 setup is heavy at all. It, I think, is on the lighter side of the daily trainer side of things, but just compared to the Rebel V5, this thing is really, really light. So yeah, for lighter, shorter runs, I would definitely prefer the Rebel V5 setup. It feels very comfortable and soft on my joints. But when it comes to doing longer runs, or if I really have to push myself on longer runs, I'm definitely grabbing the Novablast 5 setup over the Rebel V5 setup any day of the week. So Kind of with the caveat, I couldn't really choose a winner. I do really enjoy both of these setups. It really just depends what you're looking for. And last but not least, we are going to talk about the upper and the fit of both of these shoes. Honestly, both of these uppers and both of the fits are very, very good in the shoe. So let's start with the Rebel V5. You get kind of a phantom fit upper. I would say it's like a synthetic mesh. And I raved about this upper and fit in my full review of it, and I stand by it. I've run a couple more times since that full review, and my thoughts have not changed at all. I think that the Rebel V5 is such a huge step up from last year's model, the Rebel V4, with regards to fit. I think it fits a little bit more snug than last year's model. There's a little bit less volume in the toe box. There's still a little bit of volume and a little bit of room for my wider feet. Also, both of these shoes run true to size, just to put that out there. But I do like that the amount of toe space in the forefoot is not as much as last year's. It's just a good amount for longer runs when your feet expand, and not too loose while you are picking up the pace. The midfoot lockdown and just the upper in the midfoot area has a little bit more structure, so you don't feel like your foot is moving around in the shoe. Paired with that really good fit, I just really, really enjoyed the upper of the Rebel V5, and it's just such a lightweight upper as well, where you kind of feel like you're supported, but you're also feeling like you're wearing nothing when it comes to the upper. Heel lockdown on the shoe was also really, really good. Once I did the runner's loop, I had really had no problems on the shoe, and when you get the right fit in this shoe, it really feels like you're wearing nothing, but you're still fully supported, which is always a great sign when it comes to running shoes. So the Rebel V5's upper is phenomenal. Now, talking about the ASICS Novablast 5's upper, this upper is just a touch more clunky than the Rebel V5, and honestly, clunky is not a good word to use. It just is a little bit more substantial when it comes to the upper feel on foot. It's still a lightweight shoe, like I said, but it just isn't that breezy, feel like you're wearing nothing on your foot type of feel. The mesh itself on this ASICS Novablast 5 is a little bit thicker, and it does have like a booty-like construction. I would say that if I'm really nitpicking on both of the shoes, I would say that the Novablast 5s feel a little bit more supportive, and the heel lockdown is definitely even better than the Rebel V5s, because you just feel like you're sucked into this shoe and your foot is definitely not moving at all when you do tie up your shoes and you do the runner's loop, versus in the Rebel V5 there maybe is a touch more wiggle room, or you might feel like, you know, your heel might come out sometimes, or it just doesn't feel 100% locked in. I would say like 95% locked in, whereas in the ASICS Novablast 5, honestly for me, I felt 100% locked in. This is kind of the epitome of how a running shoe should be supporting and kind of locking you down. If you have, you know, maybe history with heel slippage, or you have history with injuries where, you know, your feet are moving around too much, or stability issues, I think that the Novablast 5 is a great neutral shoe that's going to really keep you supported. It's going to really lock down your foot while still maintaining a little bit of lightweightness as well as a little bit of breathability. It's not the most breathable upper. I would say the Rebel V5 definitely takes the cake on breathability, but it does have just a touch of breathability. It has a touch of support, it has a touch of lightweightness. I just think that overall the ASICS Novablast 5 is a great kind of all-arounder. It's not going to be the lightest, it's not going to be the most supportive, but it kind of does everything very, very well when it comes to an upper point of view. So if I were to choose kind of a winner when it comes to the upper, I would say that my heart kind of goes to the Rebel V5, just because I do get that 95% locked in feel. And for me personally, I don't need a whole lot of support when it comes to uppers. I think that this is a perfect balance of being really, really lightweight and feeling like I'm wearing nothing on my foot and still feeling supported on days where I really want to, I guess, like, I don't know if take care of my body is the right word, because that's more of a cushion setup thing for me. But on days where I really want to feel locked in, or, you know, I'm doing a long run and whatnot, I do like the feel of the upper of the Novablast 5. It just is a little bit more substantial, and I know that I'm going to get really, really good heel lockdown in this shoe. So with all that being said, we got to talk about price and overall which one I personally prefer. The price of the Novablast 5, it used to retail at $140, but now ASICS raised it to $150, and New Balance is actually keeping the price of the Rebel V5 at $140, so kudos to you, New Balance. So with price and all considered, I would say that if I were training for a full marathon and I wanted a really good daily trainer, I'm picking the Novablast 5 every day of the week. I think that the cushion setup, having a little bit more impact protection than the Rebel V5, is going to really help when you are training for a full marathon. You're going to be able to use this for longer runs than the Rebel V5. So it might be able to knock out 2 shoes in your rotation if you just buy the Novablast 5. The caveat with this pick is that it is $10 more expensive, and also the outsole is going to wear out a little bit faster probably than the Rebel V5. But overall, I mean, if you really want to protect your joints and you want to stay consistent in marathon training, I would definitely prefer the Novablast 5 overall. Now, with that being said, if I wasn't training for a marathon, or if I wasn't planning on running a whole lot of miles every week, I'm definitely picking the Rebel V5. I think for $10 cheaper, at price at 140, I think that that's a great price. You're getting a running shoe that kind of feels like you're wearing nothing on your foot, especially if you're kind of newer to running, or maybe you want to invest in a high quality pair of running shoes. This is going to be a huge step up from basically whatever you're running in. If you're running more in budget running shoes, or you're kind of running in non-running shoes, this is going to be a fantastic upgrade. It's extremely lightweight. There's enough cushion that you can run up to maybe 10 to 13 miles. I would say even half marathon you can run in this shoe. And yeah, it's a very, very comfortable, lightweight shoe. The price point is good. You're going to feel fully supported, very breathable, and the outsole is definitely a highlight for me personally. So overall, again, it was a little bit of a cop out. I would say that if you're running shorter distances or you're running more casually, the Rebel V5 is a fantastic option. That would be my pick. And if you're, I guess, looking to be more serious, or you want a shoe that can do multiple purposes, and you're maybe training for a marathon, or you're running more miles per week, I would say go with the Novablast 5 for that extra $10. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my comparison and the head-to-head battle between the New Balance Rebel V5 versus the ASICS Novablast 5. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these two shoes, if you have one or the other, or maybe you have both. I would love to know your experiences down in the comment section down below. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.